Welcome to Conversations with Agents of Change, where we speak with extraordinary individuals driving transformation in their fields. Today's guest is Dr. Jonny Bloomfield, a high-performance coach, author, speaker, and founder whose works bridges the science of performance with the art of well-being. From elite sport to executive boardrooms, he's dedicated to helping people and organizations unlock sustainable performance. Dr. Jonny recently delivered a TEDx talk exploring men's mental health and how vulnerability and awareness can be catalysts for resilience and leadership. We'll explore his journey, his frameworks for change, and what it really means to thrive, not just to perform. Jonny, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to Conversations with Agents of Change.
Hi, Izzy. It's great to be invited to come in and chat to you.
Great. You had such an interesting journey, from sports science to performance coaching into well-being and culture transformation. Can you take us back to the beginning? What experiences first shaped your understanding of performance, and what shifted your focus toward well-being and behaviour change?
I grew up just outside of Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I was born into a very sporty family. In particular, my father, who was very dedicated to rugby union. He was a school teacher and he was involved in some of the big schools and the schools competition. It was had a huge involvement in that for many, many years. He also coached club rugby here, and the way it worked then, it became his turn at one point to become the Ulster rugby head coach. And this was just prior to rugby union becoming a professional sport. So I grew up with a rugby ball in my hands right from the age of nothing, really. And I used to always sit beside my dad and watch the international matches. And anytime he was going out to rugby club, then I would be there and I'd be spinning a ball in my hands. And I used to always love being watching the kickers. I dreamed of being the hero that kicked the goals through the post. So I practiced that a lot. We had Northern Ireland playing in the Football World Cup in Mexico. And I do remember that being my first major tournament that I was enthralled in. It was Northern Ireland played Brazil, and it was just an amazing, exciting experience. Then the 1988 Olympics were on, and that was my first memory of an Olympic event. We used to get up really early to watch it because it was in South Korea. And one of the sports that really caught everyone's attention was the men's hockey. And Great Britain, who really hadn't done much in the sport at that time, managed to win the gold medal.
Oh, wow.
So this kind of swept the nation, really, and as they progressed through the tournament, it was just a very exciting sport to watch. But what really gripped me was there was two players from Northern Ireland on that Great Britain and Northern Ireland hockey team, and one of them was a local person from my town. So winning gold, that was huge, and suddenly he became a hero of mine.
Very inspiring, I suppose.
Hugely inspiring, yeah. At the same time, the club that he played at became the first club in the country to put down an AstroTurf pitch. Oh. So that was a big deal in 1988. Hockey was played on grass or on this thing called gravel, which is very small stones, and there were very few AstroTurf pitches. Now there's 10 a dozen, really. But I got gripped and hockey became my sport.
Wow.
My dad supported me really well. I was quite small. I always thought, I could make a scrum half or something out in rugby. I think they were very comfortable whenever I first asked for a hockey stick, because all my friends around my neighbourhood were all asking for hockey sticks and playing in the street and going to this new club with a brand new pitch that's with the gold medal winning hockey. I mean, it was impossible not to get drawn into that. So I got involved. I played it for fun, and really just became the sport that I played, field hockey. And then I progressed through my teenage years, and I got reasonably good. And I got invited to trial for Ulster, and I got picked on that squad. That was remarkable. I played my heart out at that first tournament for Ulster and got invited to trial for Ireland and got picked for Ireland under 16. And I could not believe that I had got selected. And that's when it really gripped me. I was like, okay, this is what I do. Now I'm a hockey player, and I just buried my heart and soul into playing hockey through my teenage years. I eventually worked my way up through the Lisnagarvey club, and I ended up playing directly behind this gold medal winner.
Wow.
So I had to get basically tackle the opponent and give the ball to Jimmy. And that was my job. And I did that for years. And he made everything else look very, very easy. But it was a really wonderful journey. So this lit a fire in me, sports, every thought, every action, it was all to do with hockey and sport. And I suppose my academic career, we suffered a little bit from that, and I scraped through my exams. I knew I want to have a career in sport, so I chose sports science, and I went through a degree and eventually into a PhD in sports science with the ambition of working in the English Premier League. And I delivered a lot of that in Leeds, so I had a great involvement with Leeds United, and I got involved in player transfers and medicals. I've seen some very famous players who joined Leeds United at the time who were being very successful in this era, the early 2000s. Some very famous players from other clubs joining Leeds, and I would be the first to see them in a Leeds kit, and it was pretty strange to see that. So I had a real ambition to work my career in sport. My first job as I finished out my PhD was coming back home to Ulster, and I'm working for Ulster Rugby as a strength and fitness coach. From Ulster, I progressed into the Sports Institute of Northern Ireland here, so that was great exposure to, I think I counted 14 different sports, likes of boxing and judo and sailing and lawn bowls and some other team sports, and the Northern Ireland football team. I became a sports science support for the team. That again was very new sort of training ground for me to learn my skills and practice skills. And as you go into each different sport, you have a brand new culture to understand and blend into. So it really taught me a lot about how to listen and observe and adapt to different styles of communication, how people see differently. A sailor sees things very differently to a lawn bowler, to a judo player. So I think it helped shape a lot of my skill set at that point. It was my PhD, brought me all that kind of academic knowledge, and there was a lot of hard graft and experience involved in that. But the job at Ulster Rugby was a very exciting job, and I loved it so much. I think the Sports Institute was a great way for me to learn a lot of skills that don't get readily taught. I was involved in a project that was helping athletes prepare for the Beijing Olympics.
Okay.
I was part of a group of people who were both English Institute of Sport, Scottish, the Welsh and the Northern Irish, and we were developing as practitioners to support those athletes that were preparing for the Games and the Paralympics. And I got an opportunity to perform some work for England Rugby, and I got very, very excited about that, obviously. And so I grabbed that opportunity, and I worked for 1 week delivering a lot of sports science work. And I impressed enough for them to invite me onto the backroom team. So that was a wonderful, really, opportunity. So I think where I started my passion for having a career in sport was I want to reach the very top level. I became the first sports scientist for England Rugby and started developing a service that didn't exist. So that was very exciting, but very
Fascinating, yeah.
really challenging as well. It helped build global recognition because I was obviously playing.
You were the big leagues.
We were playing other international teams. So yes, so I have very strong compatriots in, say, New Zealand and Australia and South Africa and around the British Isles and France as well. Where things changed was when really family for me came along. I found that whole career path was just going to be unsustainable because of the demand it requires and obviously the time away that it involves. And I had a big choice to make. It was like, do I want to continue living for weeks out of a suitcase, always away from home, not seeing my children very much when they were to come along, and it just didn't sit as comfortably with me as I reached towards 30 as it would have when I was 20, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
You realise what you really want out of life at some points, and I made a big decision in 2012, roughly. It was following the Rugby World Cup in 2011, and I just decided I would go out on my own in January 2012, and I started working in different sports and got some consultancy work in golf and in the Premier League, but eventually that transitioned into what was available for me in Belfast, and that was looking at health and well-being in the workplace. So I had to rebuild a completely brand new reputation with a completely different audience. But I was bringing a lot of the skills and a lot of the knowledge and the technical side of things and certainly innovation to executives back in 2015. I'd obviously spent quite a bit of time in London and seen that the well-being in the workplace was rapidly accelerating. So I was maybe a bit naive to think that the same pace would happen in Northern Ireland. But eventually I kind of got there. COVID probably helped that a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
For the first 10 years of my career was all about elite sport, and the last 10 years has all been about health and well-being in the workplace.
That's such an exciting journey to see from different angles, as you said, different sports, different ways to being part of a team, the way some people are more individualistic, or especially athletes or teams. And then you can see that similarities in the workplace, I suppose, in a different but similar way. So it's very transferable, all the skills that you gained. I believe that sometimes things happen for a reason. And the fact that you were so successful in that elite sport area, that was very relevant and very satisfactory to an extent. But at the same time, if you had made that difficult choice, you wouldn't be able to help other people that wouldn't have had access to your skills in a different way.
Yeah.
So it's blessing in disguise, or it's a difficult decision to make at the time. But then when you look back, it's like, what's the impact that decision has in other people's lives? So I'm very touched by that. I believe that what you're doing is extraordinary, and that's one of the reasons you are here. I wanted to go with what you said about your dad. In that tech talk, you were saying about your dad experience with Parkinson and how that deepened your sense of purpose. How did that personal story influence your approach to resilience and empathy in leadership?
Yeah, so Dad just turned 80 about 2 months ago, but was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 2 years ago. And he was told when he got diagnosed, if you were to get a neurodegenerative disease, now is the time to get it, because he could outlive the degeneration that it causes, but it would take an effort.
Yeah.
It would take an effort from him. He obviously has to follow quite a consistent medication protocol, which he does. But he also has to embrace a lot of lifestyle medicine and social prescribing, which has been really good for him. Dad has really got himself back into exercise in a big way, and I helped him convert the garage into a home gym. So he has equipment in there, and he tracks and monitors things, and he tells me that this was taking me 20 minutes 2 months ago, now it's taking only 15, and so on. And he gets motivated a lot by the progress. Obviously, him having a sporting career and sporting background himself, he's quite competitive at deep down. He hasn't probably been competitive for quite a while. I see this challenge he's been given as this is his new competitor. Mm-hmm. He's really determined. Once he retired as a teacher, he kind of got a little lost for a year. I'll try and swing a golf club, or he got joined a bowling club, and there just wasn't real purpose or value in that. He just didn't seem like, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? So he got himself involved in local politics, which I was a bit surprised actually. But it was quite shrewd of the party that asked him to if he would like to join, because obviously he has such deep connections with pupils who are now voters and parents, and so he's really respected and well known within the community. Because I thought it was quite shrewd of them to invite him on, and it gave him a bit of value, purpose and identity for quite a few years. His turn came up to be Lord Mayor of Lisburn and Castlereagh. You can imagine my mum taking that status and running with it. They had prestige with that, and they were often out at events and showing up and all. And Dad was really passionate to see the community benefit from his, I mean, it was the same with his politics. He was taking interest in, like, someone had a broken fence. He wanted to see if he could get someone to get that fixed.
Yeah.
So we really down to the practical levels, just helping people with their lives. So after he had finished with that, he maybe didn't have another thing, and then Parkinson's come along, and maybe that's given him another identity and challenge. But he is involved in these lifestyle medicine factors. He looks after his diet very well. He keeps regular sleep hours. He tracks his movement. He tracks his exercise. He's really cut back on things like alcohol. He doesn't smoke. He's very good on his social connections, and that's really where maybe the social prescribing piece is coming in, where he's been invited to join Parkinson groups. So he joins an exercise group with other people who are suffering Parkinson's, and really sort of, when I speak to him about it, you can really see the competitive side of that coming out. But he's also very humbled by it, because there's men in their 40s with Parkinson's, and he gets quite emotional about that, because unlike him, where he can outlive the disease, he knows that these guys will struggle to do that. So it is difficult to watch people decline.
And I'm sure that is a really inspiring to see him overcome this, and you feel inclined to support other people. And this is a fantastic story to inspire others, to see resilience, to see change of identity, which I think is very important nowadays.
Yeah. So last weekend, one of the other things he does is he's joined playing table tennis, obviously for hand-eye coordination and for the social side of it. So he was telling me last week he was involved in a 5-hour table tennis tournament.
Wow.
So and I think he had 3 matches. He lost 2 and won 1, and that was it. But Mum made it sure, yeah, it was 5 hours. But that's so good to be involved in an event like that, and actually be participating in that at 80 years old, playing people on all different ages as well. And the other social thing he does is he's involved in a choir. He sings so that he keeps his vocal cords strong for obviously his speech and for his swallow. It's important that he looks after all those very basic biological functions that he needs. But I think it's also been good for our relationship as well. A month before his 80th birthday, he had his annual Parkinson review from a consultant, and the consultant was shocked and said it's all about cognitive tests and physical tests. He says you've 0 decline since last year.
Oh my goodness, that's excellent. Yeah.
Because Parkinson's, there's an expected decline year on year. But to actually to slow the rate of decline to 0, that's really beating it, and very inspirational.
It's very exciting to hear that. I mean, I would say that most of us should pay attention to those things, not just people who are going through Parkinson. I mean, I have noticed myself, I'm not the same person I was at 20, intellectually or physically, naturally, but there's so much that we, as you say, overlook, and we don't consider, even singing, how that affects the physicality of your body.
Beyond the actual social benefits that you gain from being part of a group and
absolutely
taking a collective performance.
Yeah. I would have thought that all those hobbies are just for social interaction, but when you really think about it, it has multiple benefits, from your mental health to your physical health. So it's really interesting. Would you tell us more about that recent TEDx talk centered around men's mental health, a topic that still isn't spoken about enough, which I find very interesting, that you have such a close connection with your dad, and it's very important how you have continued helping him and growing and sticking around.
Yeah.
I think that is very interesting. So what inspired you to tackle this subject on such a public stage?
Well, it could be actually 12 months ago to this date. We're recording just before Christmas in 2025. And so just prior to Christmas 24, a curator of a TEDx event asked if I would like a spot. And I took a deep breath and said yes, and walked away from that invitation going, right, what am I going to talk about? Over the next 6 months, I shortlisted topics that I would like to talk about. There was quite a few. I then spoke to peers about what would they expect me to talk about. And in February, we had a front runner, so I was starting to work on it through March. And then in April, I completed an exam, which led me to become the first board-certified health and wellness coach in Northern Ireland. And I felt,
Fantastic.
about 2 years of the training and development, and it was a very intense final stage exam that I had to take in the US Embassy. And I came back from that going, I think I need to talk about this, really. So I wanted to talk about health coaching, and then as I was shaping that, a penny dropped for me. So I became a dad at the age of 38, and then again at the age of 40. And I looked at some research and said, well, what's the average age of a dad these days? And obviously what the average age of a mother. And in the UK, the average age of a dad is 34 and average age of a mother is 31. So I remember seeing an interesting graph where looking at the decades on the x-axis and the age of the parent on the y, and you're just seeing a linear growth. I was born in the 70s. Lots of parents were in their 20s. And it's just grown. As we've got to 2025, we're now choosing to have our children as late as possible for lots of different reasons, some of which may well be economical. Mm-hmm. And it just made me do a sum that I don't think too many people do. It's like, well, if I'm 38 and my child has a child at 30, well, it was a daughter, so it's 31. So I could be 69 or 70 when I become a grandparent. I'm gonna, and the life expectancy in Northern Ireland is 79, so I might not see them as a teenager. And then if my younger fella has a baby, so he was born 40 plus 34 if you take the average age, so I could be 74 when he is a child. So to see that child grow into a teenager, like, and then you start to think, would I make a wedding? Mm-hmm. Could I be at my grandchildren's wedding? I'm going to have to be maybe in my 90s. And you think, oh my goodness, I'm really going to have to think, how do I live long here to experience these?
Just be part of that.
And actually not just, touch wood, not be sort of a wheelchair and not be very functioning and be feel like a burden on others. I want to be functional at that age. I'm very inspired by my grandmother, who's 102 and still independent, living alone and with carers, frequent carers, but doing remarkably well. So there is longevity genes there, thankfully. Certainly on the female side, hopefully on the men's. But no, it just occurred to me that as a man, if I want to be still alive in my 90s and functioning with good health, so I have a good health span and a good lifespan, I need to take some ownership of this in midlife, whereas it's quite opposite to how men think.
Absolutely.
We, as guys, wait until we have a problem, and then we act on sorting it out. We wait and wait and wait until it's kind of too late. And that really inspired me to shape my TED talk around motivating and encouraging men in particular, but everybody, to be more proactive about their health, to choose more preventative measures, to screen early, to go be proactive in terms of getting to know your numbers. And let's not just pretend they don't exist, where a lot of us do. We might be conditioned by our health service, which is obviously a reactive health service. So you only think about health when you need help. So as long as we feel okay and we don't need to speak to a doctor, that justifies us. We're fine. Mm-hmm. We're okay. And I'm encouraging people not to think that minimally.
Yeah.
And just wait for the fuse or the dynamite or the...
Because when you need help, it's usually a bit late to make choices, and it's certainly harder to...
So speaking of GPs, I know, particularly when I talk to them about men, they're like, well, if more men walk through my door when the problem's 3 out of 10, I can do something. We can get rid of that problem. The issue is, guys come in my door at 8 out of 10, and it's like, too late. Now, how do we manage this? How do we give you some sort of quality life for at least a few more years? And it's just, if we had acted sooner. And we all know people who have suffered this result. As men, we have a lower life expectancy than our female counterparts, and we've got a lower health span as well. So the health span being the years of quality life that are disease or dysfunction free. So we're able to have a high levels of freedom and control and autonomy over how well we live our entire lives. We don't, health span is shortening, so a lot of people live that final stage of life with conditions to manage and restrictions and limitations and challenges, and it gets pretty hard as we get into older age. So yeah, if you're listening to this talk and I just motivate you to take some action on finding out where you're at. Go know your numbers. Go find out if you're doing one thing only. Just go take a blood pressure reading and find out where your blood pressure is, because it's an absolute rock star in terms of your health, and it can reveal so much. Once you do that first measurement, then what's the next one and the next one and the next one, and
Keep track of it. Yeah.
just to start to get a more self-awareness over what your health status is like, and then start to address lifestyle factors that make a difference. Look at the story I've told about my dad. Finding something out has led into positive action.
Absolutely.
So if we don't bother finding stuff out and we just wait until a problem hits us, then we kind of live a life of regret, going, if only
I knew, or if I only had it
20 years ago, if only I had done something about this, or if I had discovered this. But unfortunately, we have toxic masculinity where we tough things out, we keep a stiff upper lip, and we just pretend that we're invincible and it happens to them, won't happen to me. And it's all too sad, whenever the case.
What do you think are those barriers that stop men addressing their mental health and their physical health?
I think we're conditioned, for starters. Like as I just mentioned, masculinity conditions us to, come on, tough it up and don't be weak. So I think there's that societal pressure over don't be vulnerable, which leads to a life of regret eventually. The other problem is that men are really scared, unlike women who are very proactive in terms of, like, particularly in the areas of female health. You seem to have bought in. This is really important to know and to get screened and to check. Whereas men are like, if I don't check, I don't find out, so therefore I don't get scared.
Out of sight, out of mind.
There's just this massive fear of, if I was to find out something, it'd be awful, and I'd rather kind of not know. So we're deep down, we're just really scared of a result and having to face up to that. On the way in this morning, I was on social media and I just saw they're getting ready for sports personality, and some of this sort of sporting celebrities were talking about a true hero of mine, which is Sir Chris Hoy, has got a terrible diagnosis of terminal prostate cancer. So he only has a certain amount of time left. But these people were talking about when so it was Andy Murray, Laura Kenny. So they were saying about when they heard about his diagnosis, and obviously in feeling very emotional, but then they just turned to, like, his bravery, his courage, his positivity around facing up to his diagnosis and what he has in front of him. So there's tremendous inspiration from a person like that facing up to his ultimate challenge, which will unfortunately end his life in the next few years. I've also been deeply touched this year when I was at England Rugby. Captain was Lewis Moody, who revealed this year he has MND, which is, again, a fatal condition that ultimately strips a person's identity away from them. So he's facing that battle that's lying ahead from him. So yeah, deeply emotional. But I think it's remarkable how brave these high-profile characters are coming out publicly and declaring their destiny, and are just then shying away from. They're actually being very proactive in terms of what they're doing to battle against their own personal disease, but also to raise funds for other people not to suffer like they will. So tremendous characters and truly inspirational human beings.
Definitely, because it's not just about feeling sorry for yourself. It's about being proactive and trying to help others and inspire others to prevent and to,
Yeah.
as you said, check.
They're the type of characters that I've turned the most enormous negative into some sort of positive. I imagine they gain purpose and identity through it, so it gives them personally some value. But the true value is the inspiration that they're passing on to everybody else as a way of how they're challenging or facing up to their diagnosis. And you see their sporting competitiveness come through. Like I was talking about, my dad sees Parkinson's as a competition.
I'm going to beat it.
I'm going to beat it. Although these men will be lost to these diseases, they're not going to go down without fighting.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm not going to let this strip my identity away. I'm going to make sure that I do everything I can to
It's really inspiring.
rinse out every last drop of life that I have left, and also to support the charities and the research that will come behind me to prevent other people from suffering the destiny that those guys have. So yeah, hugely, incredibly inspiring. So we've been talking about getting Joe Blogs off the couch and go find your numbers out, and then you've got heroes, true heroes like these men who are facing up to the ultimate battle and are doing it publicly, and not just for themselves but for all people that come behind them.
So
Sure.
what reactions or feedback did you receive after the TEDx talk that you really surprised you or moved you?
On the day, I remember being approached by guys who had a quiet word, and it was really nice to be approached like that. People start revealing things to me that they've not told anyone before about their sort of mental health or their life situation, or how they feel as an employee or an executive or a dad or a husband. The people who maybe have quiet words with you about struggles they're having are not necessarily the people that you would ever expect. So nobody has immunity to suffering mental health. Let's just say that it's not getting it all right, not having it all together. I think that's definitely taught me the development of listening and observing and knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it. A big factor is like not judging, and that's a huge element of being a good health coach. You provide a safe space where there's no judgment and people can show their vulnerability and say things that they've never said before. People have issues, and people who you don't expect to have issues, believe me. Then another surprise is then, like, people messaging you. Maybe I've done a talk at a follow-up talk at an organization, and then you get a follow-up message somewhere down the line saying, listen, I really got inspired by your talk and I took a lot away from that. So that was good. Hearing people being proactive, and I joined a club, or I got back into running, or I'm now spending more time with friends in a kind of a different way.
Which is something that I really like about the way you do networking. So it's not just sit there and chat, but you just take people for a walk, and then people interact that way, which I find is very different in a way, but I think it's very successful. Would you tell us a little bit of that? Working
as a result of COVID, whenever the bubbles started popping and we were allowed to meet other human beings socially again. For work purposes, I live beside a really nice stately park where we have our parliament in Northern Ireland. It's called Stormont, and beautiful grounds. So every time I was to see a client or a new prospect or maybe a colleague or someone I was looking to catch up with, instead of booking a meeting room or meeting in a hotel lobby or coffee shop somewhere, I say, hey, why don't we meet at the gates, go for a walk? And the response to that, everyone lit up, is that's a brilliant idea. So really, from that moment, I've been kind of doing walks and talks. And then I remember doing a walk and talk with, I think it was my accountant at the time, and he's a serial networker. He turns up at everything. And he asked me, do you ever think about doing this like with more people? And I thought, you mean networking? And I mean, he got excited. He said, what is that? And I said, oh, it's a thing that's kind of come off COVID, and lots of net walks are happening. I said, that's brilliant, you should do that. So I decided to give it a go, but I would do it in a particular way that it was very informal, low key, and casual, relaxed. So I didn't want much effort to go in, but I also wanted that atmosphere that people felt free and safe to just to come and be themselves. Sometimes when you go to networking events, you have to be your business person and sort of have your pitch ready in your elevator. You kind of act a wee bit. I kind of wanted to break people by from people. So let's get to know you. So let's come here with no guards up and just no pitching. Just tell us about you. Tell us about your work. Tell us about what's going on in life. And yeah, I have the line of like, you're here to talk about your life, your work, and anything in between, and have pleasant conversations with people. So I have a route and a structure that I follow. So people get 10 or 15 minutes with 3 or 4 or 5 different people as we go around the route. We walk 5,000 steps. We go up a big hill. We pause halfway just to let people catch the breath, and then and we do group chats. So each time we pause, we gather. So people who are maybe faster walkers, they kind of hit the checkpoint and wait. The slower walkers, they follow up behind. But then when we congregate as a group again 4, 5, 6 times, then I say, right, has anyone got like a problem they're trying to solve, or we kind of get the wisdom out of the group, or anyone got a win that when they want to celebrate, just so that we kind of have a little bit of togetherness, or anyone in need of any help, anyone looking to connect with anyone in particular. We're very fortunate in Northern Ireland. We're a very close, small community. So someone said to me yesterday, it's about a third the size of Manchester. So it's like, say we're all connected. We all know each other so deeply. Everyone knows somebody who's the ideal person who needs to be in touch with somebody else.
Networking.
That's the best thing about Northern Ireland. It's the business community is so fantastic at supporting each other. I think there's plenty of formal business networks and events, and there's a lot more that are more driven than others and so on. But I thought, well, what's missing is like a really casual one.
Yeah.
So it started in November 2022. We meet on the last Friday of every month at the front gates of Stormont. So we meet at 10 o'clock, and we always have a group of 10 to 15 people, and we've done it for 3 years. We've done it for 37 months now.
That's great.
Without any break. And the remarkable thing is, absolutely without fail, I cannot remember the last month that we didn't have a new person, at least one new person turn up.
That's
I don't know where they come from, because I don't advertise. It just word of mouth spreads. It's a side thing, if anything. It's such a nice group. It's a great community. We've got certainly well over 100 people have come along and done at least one over the last 3 years. And I think one of the key things that came out of it was actually the TEDx, the curator I talked about earlier on. He came along, and he met 2 other fellas who curated a TEDx in a different place. And they got talking, and he then got inspired to do it. And they said, well, we'll support you. We'll tell you what we learned from doing ours. And
That's brilliant.
we'll prevent you from making any of the mistakes we made. And they were an integral part of this team. So maybe that's one reason why I was invited to speak at it. The whole thing wouldn't have happened if we didn't network. And he shared with me just recently, those guys have all gone on and they've done like £250,000 of business together.
Wow.
In the last year. So business has happened, friendships have formed, and it's a very supportive.
In different aspects.
100%.
And it's also to share their experiences and the journey and challenges, and not just like in a personal level. It's the whole journey, as you said, as an entrepreneur. So in terms of leaders and culture and change, where do most organizations get it wrong? How can leaders build systems that support both performance and well-being long-term?
So I believe the big mistake that everyone makes is they go, we need to create the culture, and they design it.
Yeah.
Like this is the culture we want to have, but it doesn't work that way. It works the other way. Mm-hmm. What are the key behaviours? What are the non-negotiables? What are the daily processes? How do we do things around here? That creates the culture, as opposed to fitting it the other way. I'd say culture is created as a result of all the little bits that go on inside each person's working day and how it all collates as well. Some organizations might start with the values, with the mission statement, with the posters and the incentives and so on. But the problem with that is maybe a snazzy slogan about how we work here. But the problem is when the reality doesn't match, it's very visible to everybody. And then it feels really, really wrong. It's like, this place doesn't feel authentic to me because it says it has these values on the walls. We walk in the building. It has this slogan about what life is all about here. I don't feel that.
Yeah.
That's not the reality. So as a worker, I'm going, I don't know if I see myself working here very long because I don't see this lining up to what they say and what they do. So I think that can be a problem when you start with the end in sight. I think you have to start at the start.
Yeah, like back to front, right?
I think so. And then leaders totally underestimate their influence on the culture. So they'll go, we want this culture, but that doesn't include me and my behaviour. I can act against this culture because I'm the leader.
Yeah, do what I say, know what I do.
Totally. And I'll be able to reprimand you if you're not following the culture, but I get off scot-free.
Yeah.
Because I'm a leader, and
That's apply to me.
I'm above that. So it's so visible to people. It just stinks. It smells, and it's horrible to see. And that's when people go, I'm not sticking around because I don't feel like I'm in an authentic place. So unfortunately, when culture is done to you, that's when it fails as well. It's not done with you.
Yeah.
So it has to be a collective component. I'm thinking of the sports team, so it's very much about generating the right culture and having a lot of them will try and we think it was Manchester United are going through a big change around they've exited certain players who they feel are bad for the culture, and they've brought new players in who feel will be more positive, more aligned to the culture that they want. But it still comes down to how people behave every day, or what the manager said, or how the manager acts and behaves, what public messages go out, or the board presenting to the world as well. So many of those factors are crucial. But again, if you get a point where your key workers are starting to disbelieve that what we were talking about earlier on, what is being said and what is being done doesn't line up, they just disengage.
Absolutely.
Just disengage. Like, okay, so I'm now out of a relational situation with my employer. I'm now just here for the money. And I'll punch in, punch out.
And is there a way back in, or is that like a lost cause?
I think there probably is a way to repair. It obviously would involve.
It comes from
Innovi-
top down.
Yeah, it comes from top down, but individuals probably have to leave. It gets to a point where it's too much is riding on key individuals being present, and they need to be removed so that people then see hope to go, okay, with those individuals, that individual gone now, I can see possibility that this place could get better. But obviously it's really essential that the next leader comes in and executes correctly and gets everybody re-engaged and build their faith, their belief and trust in the mission and in the style of work.
Yeah.
But then it takes time because they're wary of, like, we've heard this all before. We've been here once, like, so they're wary of going through an activity or an exercise to create a new culture. That once life gets busy and work gets challenging, and there's deadlines and maybe things aren't working out as they should be, and then true colours start to show. It's like, okay, so what was that culture bit we did at the start of the year all about?
And speaking of leaders, it just really struck me how you managed to make this very difficult decision that I believe not most men do in the same direction that you did, quote unquote, sacrificing your professional career to prioritize your family and well-being and your emotion connection to your people. How leaders can feel their vulnerability without sacrificing authority or feeling that they have lost strength. How do you find a balance, and how would you suggest or recommend people to see that? I get that is probably a moral compass or a personal decision, but also
Very much so.
I would say that I have met men in power or in a leadership role that feel that they cannot allow themselves to choose family time because they have still this societal programming that I'm a provider, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't think they are necessarily contradictory. You can still be a provider and feel that you are doing this for your family. At the same time, you still can go to your children's play, or you still can choose to reduce your hours.
So it's a good question. So when I was on the road a lot, living out of suitcases and multiple flights per week, there was obviously an excitement to that, and I felt very important. But the reality kind of sits in like, okay, so this is all coming at some sort of cost. I would talk a lot in my coaching. If you are high performing, be aware of your costs and then make a choice. And that choice should be very much like, you have one life, you only go around once. And you want to make sure that when you get towards the latter stages of your life, you have no regrets, and also those costs don't cost you your life, like divorce or your children despise you, they don't know you.
Exactly, yeah.
And they feel remorse and regret that you were never around. And you hear it in older men who have been through that journey and are looking back. They're well retired and they are looking back, and you hear it a lot of guys going, I should have been around more. I probably was in the office a little too much at times. I chose to miss events, key family events like your birthdays and your plays and your school activities. I opted for work over those more often than I should. And I talked earlier about a very, very important quality in coaching is no judgment. So I have no judgment. I just like to make people aware that there's costs.
Exactly. That's their own cost, and they'll have to do it themselves.
You're in a position where there could be choice. You make a choice, like society's pressuring me to keep climbing the ladder or growing the bottom line, and there is that pressure to do that. And I say, okay, but are you comfortable with the costs that could be to your health or to your social relationships or your future status, or all these things are key considerations. And if people say, yeah, the cost is worth it, then, that's...
But at least an informed decision, right?
I like people just kind of pause and think. So I felt my costs were higher than what I could tolerate. So I despite being a good 10 years into my career and being at a pinnacle and really having great identity and prestige and being where I wanted to be, but I don't look back for one moment now, 13 years later, and think, oh, I've missed out. I've just moved on. And I've really enjoyed my adventure through that. I've developed so much more as a person, and I sometimes check in with my peers who I left behind 13 years ago, and they're still doing the thing that we were doing. And a lot of them say, not much moved on. Like, so you've just ground it out. I feel very contented and justified with the choice I made versus I've put my children to bed every single night of their lives. I've made them breakfast every single day. We sit down as a family and have dinner together. We have our Saturdays and Sundays together. We do activities together. We ride bikes. I've been there, present throughout their entire lives. And I just think that's the most value I could provide these two people that we chose to bring into the world. That to me, that's my job. Mm-hmm. That's what I should have to do. And I'm now at a stage where my wife's returned to work after 6 years. So she took a big break in her career and she's now back doing her role part-time, which means I am now more involved in the things like the day-to-day. So 3 days a week, I'm dropping off and picking up from schools. I'm doing homeworks. I'm cooking dinners 3 nights a week for us. And I've got a very important role there. And I'm really pleased to see that I'm not the only dad at the gate either.
Yeah.
There's lots of dads that are sharing the load with their partner, because that's marriage is just teamwork. We've got to team up and we work on this together. I think we're going back to masculinity and sort of.
Exactly, yeah.
I think we've moved on from there's the breadwinner and then the homekeeper.
We actually are like so you can see that nowadays in parent teacher meetings. You can see that in shops. You can see it in parks. So that's great to see that roles are not as they used to be, or they are still in other places, or they used to be a couple of years ago. things are shifting, which I think is really good. And I think it's very important to have role models. So if children see more dads there, obviously they are going to see that as something normal. And if at workplace we see more women in leading positions, it just becomes normal. Women getting back to work.
It's so important that children get enough input from both the father and the mother, so they have a rounded upbringing and enter the world with good respect for both genders. I think it's crucially important that the mother and the father contribute to the upbringing and nurturing of the children. We're shaping young minds. We're very impressionable, and the world out there is even more challenging than it was when it was my father's time to bring me up. So I think there's a crucial role at this when they're certainly below the age of 10 still, and trying to shape them, get them ready for a very challenging world that they'll be entering into.
Absolutely. And that just brings me a little bit to the future. So what do you think the future of high performance evolving? What new conversations are still not having about well-being?
Well, I think we're moving away from doing more, do it faster, do it better. We're kind of thinking more, how do we sustain, how do we do things smarter, and how do we do things more sustainably? Both in terms of human and environmental, I think. But I think we're missing out a conversation about how we're designing our work so that we're providing a sufficient balance for parents to be parents and for teams to function well and so on. And we're often seeing well-being done around the edges of that. So we might have a lunchtime talk or a well-being day or a well-being week or a little kind of pocket event. But we were talking earlier about culture, and certainly well-being needs to be kind of the foundation of a performance culture. I heard excuse the accent, but I think I heard this person in North America say recently to me, if you ain't well, you ain't performing nothing. If we're going to produce sustainable high performance, then health and well-being needs to be actually foundational to that and respected. Yes, it can be stretched at times, but if it's not respected, it just leads to chronic conditions and burnout and so on. So it's all about how we design our work, how we design our systems, identifying priorities, allowing people to have deep work time and recovery time. So recovery, and certainly in sport, recovery is one of the big buzzwords. It's not quite there in the world of business that it needs to be. Is like the respect for recovery. People are still banging emails out at 12 or the 1 in the morning and getting through deep work at periods when really this should be recovering and preparing for the next stage of deep work. And we have to also being careful not to reward people who go do these kind of traditional high performing heroics. I have to make sure that they be aware that that's not the culture we would like to see here. We want a culture of sustainable human performance. So the harder you drive your workload or your team, the faster they'll burn out.
Yeah.
And that will lead to obviously lots of costly issues. So I think that's where true high performance needs to get to. We have to shift away from kind of doing it more, doing it bigger, doing it faster. It's doing it smarter and doing it much more sustainably than we ever did. That's true. I think that's true high performance, particularly in the work context.
That's really powerful. It's very common to hear people, workers or people, when we work on a shared office, and you hear people from different companies, and you see how some companies, they are shifting into 4 days weeks.
Yeah.
And they finish early, and there's no people after 5 p.m. around in the building almost. And some people have a different culture altogether, a very boomers type of belief that they need to wear the company jacket and they just need to push through and work every moment they can. I think that is shifting slowly, but thankfully to these conversations that go public and talking to more people and normalizing. I have a life outside work. I'm not work.
Yeah.
I'm not my profession. I am a full person that has hobbies and interests and passions, and I rest as well. And it's okay to rest. It's okay to to say, what did you do on Sunday? Nothing.
Yeah.
I just relaxed, and that's okay as well. And people normalizing as well, people taking holidays just to rest, not to get more stress and driven and spent somewhere else. So I think that's really, really important. And that's why I'm loving this conversation. And I just want to ask you one more thing. What would be the message that you want our listeners to take from today's conversation? I know you said that it's very important. That you said earlier about get people to get checked and to know their numbers and to know themselves. But apart from that, is there anything that you would like them to take from today's conversation?
Okay, so as we've just been talking there about sustainable high performance, and let's leave this as a message. We'll start with honesty. Honesty about how you really are and how you're really doing. Particularly if you're a man listening to this, give yourself the permission to tell the truth about your stress, your health, your feelings, and then start to take some small, consistent actions to respond to that. And guess what? Everybody will win. You, as an individual, will win from that, but also you'll have this ripple effect that you'll not realize. So the impact that you'll have on your family, on your children, on your team, and your entire organization is if you lead with yourself and putting well-being high up there in terms of sustainable high performance, you will transform everything. So that's definitely my parting message. And again, another reminder, start by knowing your numbers.
That's really, really powerful. Jonny, thank you so much for joining us. Your work reminds us that true performance isn't about constant acceleration. It's about alignment, awareness, and care. And for listeners who'd like to connect or learn more, you can visit jonnybloomfield.com or follow him on social media. You have been listening to Agents of Change, where we celebrate people choosing action over apathy to build a better future. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share, rate, and subscribe. Until next time, keep leading with purpose. This podcast is produced by the Change Impact Group.